I tell them that's where all the Iranian Japanese Americans go. It was a wonderful city to grow up in. I decided to get involved in journalism. I studied journalism. I was working as a journalist in the United States. But I wanted to learn more about my father's country of Iran, and I wanted to report from Iran. So in 2003, when I was 25 years old, I went to Iran to report. And at that time, it was toward the end of the second term of office of the reformist president Khatami. During his presidency, there was a relative opening of freedom of the press. More foreign journalists and dual national journalists like me were allowed to report in Iran. There were more publications, Iranian publications, that got permission to print. And journalists were in general more outspoken and a little bit more critical than they had been before. But the hardliners had lashed back. They shut down a lot of these publications, kicked out some journalists, and jailed some journalists. These restrictions got worse under the presidency of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who took office for the first time in 2005. More publications were shut down, more foreign journalists and dual national journalists like me faced limitations, and more journalists were jailed. I had to cut back my journalistic activities, and I was asking myself, it was about 2006, well, should I leave the country now? I mean, I've had a few years of good experience here, and I can't report as much as I'd like, so maybe it's time to go and report somewhere else. But I decided to stay because I realized that actually maybe this is an opportunity in some ways. I have more time, and I'll write a book about Iranian society because there's so many stories that have yet to be told, I believe, or can be told more in depth than you can tell in a short news report. So I set out and I interviewed a lot of people in different parts of Iran and from different walks of life, and that took about 2 years. I was getting close to finishing the research, and I had done a lot of the writing for the book, and I was getting ready to leave the country when I was arrested in January 2009. My captors told me that they believed that my book was a cover for espionage in the United States. They said, it's not possible you can interview so many people just for a book, so you must be a spy. And I told them I'm not. And just read some of the chapters I've written, and you'll see that it's actually a book, a cover for espionage. But they said they didn't believe me, and they took me to Evin prison, which is the most notorious prison in Iran, where many political prisoners and prisoners of conscience are held, including student activists, women's rights advocates, labor activists, journalists, webloggers, and others. I was put in solitary confinement for the first 2 weeks, and that was probably the most difficult time for me. I was cut off from the outside world and so on. But after about 2 weeks, I was allowed to go into a cell with other women, prisoners of conscience. They included, for example, over time, 2 women leaders of Iran's minority Baha'i faith, who are still in prison today. That's thought to be the largest non-Muslim religious minority in Iran, and Amnesty has done a lot of work for them as well. They've been sentenced to 20 years in prison, reduced to 10 years, although they haven't received any ruling in writing so far. I was also in a cell with a humanitarian worker, student activist, a few women who were being punished because of their exercise of freedom of expression. There were 2 women who had gone to their local bakeries and shouted, "We want bread," and they were arrested. It was part of the civil disobedience movement. There was a woman who was arrested and accused of propaganda against the state after she had done an interview with Voice of America Persian. From these women, I learned a great deal about courage, because I saw that despite the great deal of pressures they were put under, they refused to give up their principles and their beliefs and their support for basic human rights. They told me we would rather stay in prison for an unknown period of time, maybe even if it's years, than to be released after giving up these principles or sacrificing these principles. We're not going to make a deal with our captors to get out earlier. Some of them said we're even ready to die, and I believed it. Well, I was very fortunate because after 100 more people have been jailed. The freedom of speech and freedom of expression has come under much more assault than before. It's not only journalists, but also filmmakers who've been punished for speaking out and doing their work. It's much more difficult for artists, musicians, and others to do their work. People who have gone out into the streets to protest peacefully, some have been beaten, some have been detained, some have been killed. As far as the situation for journalists go, right now, according to Reporters Without Borders, in one of their recent reports, about 24 journalists have been expelled since the 2009 election. And Reporters Without Borders has also documented the cases of about 200 Iranian journalists who have gone into exile. In one of their recent reports, the group said that some of these journalists have been getting death threats through their text messages or email or anonymous phone calls. And one of the messages was, "Stop your bad for me. So I figured if they're telling me that they're bad, it must be good. And I could tell they were getting aggravated. I think it was mainly because of these pressures by organizations like Amnesty International and the efforts of ordinary individuals, the media coverage, and so on. All these things combined to help pressure the authorities to release me after 100 days. I'm very fortunate for that attention. I'm very grateful for it as well. Um, Amnesty International's role I've heard since I was released in the U.S. There were about 30,000 messages sent by full membership, by various members of Amnesty International on my behalf. There were press releases, there were interviews done also on my behalf. And I was also told that through the Urgent Action Network, people all over the world sent letters to Iranian officials on my behalf. There was also an online action. When I was in prison, eventually my parents came to Iran and they were able to see me once a week. I think it was one reason they could see me was because of all the publicity that by that